I'm Jamie, and I'm here to talk to you about America's most charismatic snake, the Eastern Indigo Snake, the Lord of the Forest. I have a lot to tell you about, a lot to talk to you about, not just about how to keep them in captivity, because many of you might never have an indigo snake to take care of yourself at home. But more importantly, Charles Darwin said the love of all living creatures is the most noble attribute of men. But he didn't mean the love of all creatures of our pet, just for our pets. He didn't mean just the love of pets. He meant the love and appreciation of animals as they exist, as they really are, which is as wild creatures, as a part of the natural world. And the Eastern Indigo Snake is a fascinating example of that. And I think if someone comes to talk to you about how to keep a lizard or a snake or a frog or a turtle in captivity in an enclosure in your home, and they don't say anything about what that animal's life is in the wild, what its true identity is as a wild creature, then we have all done that animal a great disservice, because it didn't arrive after hundreds of millions of years of evolution to be in a tank in our home. That's just an extra privilege that we exercise. So I've always been interested in classification. I think classification, I'm only going to spend a very short time, don't worry, but is really interesting because it tells us about the relationship between animals. It tells us about their evolution, how they're different from and similar to other animals, and how they came to be. Charles Darwin said there is grandeur in this view of life. From so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. That's from his classic text, The Origin of Species, which gave us a unified field theory of biology, if you will. And taxonomy tells us, classification tells us a little bit about that, and that's why I think it's interesting. If I'm going to talk to you today about what is an indigo snake, well, that immediately begs some questions. Well, what's a snake? Well, a snake is a reptile without limbs. Well, what's a reptile? Well, a reptile is an animal with a backbone and with scales. So you see, it leads us to all those questions, and when we can figure out what indigo snakes have in common and how they are different from other animals, helps us to understand them. So in 1748, a Swedish botanist by the name of Carl Linnaeus gave us a classification system that we still use today, amazingly, 2.5 centuries later, that we still use today to identify every living organism. Every single one. Although and it's based on morphology, on the physical characteristics of animals, what organisms have in common and what differentiates them. And it's actually based, loosely inspired, let's say, by an attempt that Aristotle had made at a similar system 2,000 years before. And we now call this Linnaean Taxonomy. And basically it's a system of classification. It's a layer of categories, or taxa, they're called. 8 basic ones here. And we look at this just has, eukaryote has to do with the cell structure. The animal kingdom, you've heard that. The phylum, chordata, going down that list of basic 8s, I should say: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, subspecies. That's the basic structure. So when we come down here to the subphylum of vertebrata, vertebrae, animals with backbones, that's us. We already have stuff in common. And then we go to squamata, and that's the stuff that we're all here at San Diego Herp Society interested in. Squamata, we are squamata people, all about snakes and lizards. And then the suborder Serpentes, which is snakes, which breaks from squamata, from lizards, about 190 million years ago during the Jurassic era, because snakes are the most recently evolved reptiles. Isn't that interesting? They lost their legs most recently. And now under Serpentes, so in Serpentes, there's like 3,400 maybe species of known snakes in the world today, 3,400 species of snakes. And they're broken into, well, could be 19 families, could be 25, depends what you talk about. Taxonomists don't play well together. But whatever it is, most of those families we don't really even hear of. They're pretty obscure. We don't see them in zoos. We barely catch them in the wild. We don't keep them much at home. There's only a handful of families we really keep much at home. And I'm going to get to those in a minute. So here, let's come back to this. So you already know some of these most common families, right? The boas and the pythons, the Boidae. They may be in the same family or subfamilies, but the Boidae, which are very similar, boas and pythons. Pythons are old world, boas are new world. Pythons are egg layers, oviparous. Boas are oviparous. They give birth to live prey, but they're very similar. Again, pythons old world, boas new world. You know that family, and then you know there's a couple of families that are venomous that have been categorized by their teeth morphology, the shape of their teeth. So elapids are the groups with fixed fangs, and you know those. That's cobras and water snakes and coral snakes here in America. I'll show you one in a moment. So that's a major family: the boas, the pythons, the elapids, and also big venomous family, the vipers, Viperidae, which is actually two subfamilies of. And then there's Colubridae, and the Colubrids are the most modern snakes, and this is a huge family, about anywhere from half to 3/4 of all known snakes. That's a couple of thousand species, so it's hard to make general statements about them. Their body thickness tends to be a little more slender and consistent than boas and pythons, but of course there's exceptions because the boreal tree-living snakes are really slender. And then we come down, and I'll come back to it in a moment, to the Drymarchon. So here's some of the elapids that you know. There's a beautiful cobra. Here's a coral snake, which is an elapid related to the cobras, and this is a North American snake. And this is the gaboon viper. This is in the true viper family. You can see one of these at the San Diego Zoo. They have those big heads because they have giant venom glands and the biggest fangs of any venomous snake. And again, so the vipers have hinged fangs and the elapids have fixed fangs, which are smaller. This is an African snake. But now when we get to the pit vipers, Herpetological, then we see all of these in the United States. And here's a cottonmouth, which is telling you what it's called right there, giving you its namesake warning. This beautiful copperhead, gorgeous American snake. And this is one of the many rattlesnakes in North America. This is the largest species, the Eastern diamondback rattler, which coexists in the southeast United States with Eastern indigo snakes and is sometimes food. And I will come back to that. So here we go. So we're back to the taxonomy, and we get all the way down here to the bottom. And now we have Drymarchon is the genus that Eastern indigos are in, along with cribos and couperi, because the other thing that Linnaeus gave us is this binomial naming system, two words that give every living organism in the world a name. So we are Homo sapiens. We're in the genus Homo, and we are the species sapiens. If you look at a wolf, a timber wolf, it's the genus is Canis. Canis is the genus, which is the canines, the canids, same genus as domestic dogs, foxes, coyotes, and so on. And then the species is lupus, Canis lupus. We are Homo sapiens. Homo is the genus, sapiens is the species. And in the case of the Eastern indigo snake, and now we're kind of done with our classification, you can breathe again. Here is Drymarchon and couperi.